professors who nurtured and inspired us, and for the friendships, old, new, and renewed, that have formed us into this faithful learning community. We honor this holy moment in time, grateful for all that has passed, all that you are doing among us now, and hopeful for all that is yet to be. Bless the food and the fellowship that we share, that this celebration may inspire us to live more faithful service to you and to one another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
This is the first day of our 2015 Festival of Theology and Alum Reunion, and it has been a full day already, and we have a wonderful lecture that I know it will be wonderful. Where's Miguel? Has he already gone over to start lecturing? Excellent. So we'll move along. Now is our opportunity to come together as alums, as friends of the seminary, as members of this community, and celebrate not only the rich theological education that our seminary provides, but also the powerful impact that such an education makes in the communities where you serve. This evening, we recognize a few of our alums who exemplify that impact. Our Distinguished Alum and First Decade Award recipients carry their seminary experience with them in their hearts as they answer God's call to serve others. Our Distinguished Alum Awards are presented to Louisville Seminary graduates who have made a lasting impact on the church and on society through outstanding professional, volunteer, and philanthropic accomplishments, and who have advanced the mission of God in this world. In 2012, the seminary also established a First Decade Award, which is presented to a recent graduate who has made a significant impact on the church and in the community within the first 5 to 9 years of ministry and service. Tonight's award recipients represent the type of leaders that our church needs. This is a sensitive, even fearful time for our church. Some congregations are dwindling, financial need increases, societal pressures and tensions, as well as religious and cultural differences, challenge us to be ministers of peace and justice. Our church needs informed and educated leaders, people who understand that there are no simple answers to the challenges we face, and who are prepared to invite us toward creative and innovative ways of addressing those challenges. Tonight's award recipients use the gifts they have been given to make our world a better place. They help us understand that God's love is bigger than our differences and greater than our weaknesses. Their dedication to ministry is a testament to and an extension of the theological education provided at Louisville Seminary. And we're going to begin this evening with the presentation of our First Decade Award. To introduce our First Decade Award recipient, I would like to invite Dr. Deborah Mumford, our Associate Dean for Student Academic Affairs, and the Frank H. Caldwell Associate Professor of Homiletics, to the podium.
Jamesetta Ferguson. She has served as the pastor of the St. Andrew's UCC Church since 2007. Now, very few people would have taken this position. I don't know if anybody's asking why. First of all, St. Peter's is in the Beecher Terrace, Russell neighborhood of Louisville, which is one of the poorest areas in Jefferson County. The second reason is, since the people are poor, she does not get paid. Just to be clear. The Beecher Terrace neighborhood is one in which the people are desperately in need of hope. The average life expectancy of residents in Russell is about 14 years less than the average life expectancy of people who live in St. Matthews. or in other places in the East End. And this is due to a whole host of socioeconomic factors. So the ministry of St. Peter's under Jamesetta's leadership is a beacon of hope in this place. Every week, more than 800 people come to St. Peter's for AA meetings on Saturdays and Tuesdays and Thursdays. The church welcomes men from the community transitional services who are drug addicts and sex offenders who are just trying to turn their lives around. A lot of people are unwilling to minister to people like these. Every week, residents of the neighborhood who often don't have money to buy food can get the food they need to survive through the Dare to Care program. Worship services are held on Saturday mornings and on Sunday mornings, Bible studies every Thursday evening. And in February 2011, Jamesetta, with the help of some very able people like Teresa Walton back there and Savaskia Pope, established a community development program entitled Namolo Village, which is a Christian-based community development program designed to promote individual and community empowerment through education, volunteerism, and healthy living. Now, if this sounds like a lot of work, that's because it is. Following in the footsteps of the Apostle Paul, who made tents while preaching the gospel, Jamesetta is employed full-time at the University of Louisville as the business administrator and clinical practice manager of the School of Medicine Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine, and she's served in that capacity for more than 25 years. Dr. Ferguson received her bachelor's in business administration and finance from the Central State University in Wilberforce, Ohio. She graduated from U of L with a Master of Education, and she's also graduated twice from this place with her Master of Divinity degree in 2006 and her DMin in 2013. In 2014, all of this, right, working and all of that, so busy woman. In 2014, Dr. Ferguson was selected as a Bingham Fellow and was participant in a 2014 UPS award-winning Bingham project entitled One West. Now she's also married to the minister and just able Deacon Levy Ferguson, yes. And they have two children, Ayana Lee and Guante, who are here this evening. And there is a son-in-law involved, Dion Lee, yes. And there are also 4 grandchildren, Legend, Kennedy, Justice, and Messiah. So, Louisville Seminary is right and proud to recognize the ministry of Reverend Dr. Jamesetta Ferguson. Every day she embodies our mission, which is participating in the redemptive ministry of Jesus Christ. And she does it, I might add, with great joy and a smile. So I give you the Reverend Dr. Jamesetta Ferguson.
President Jenkins and Dean Garrett, Associate Dean Mumford, and board members, Judy and Linda, and other distinguished alumni and friends, and my family who are here this evening to support me. I'm in awe of this recognition, but I'm grateful to God and to all of you for this amazing selection, when I know that there are so many other alum that are just as deserving, if not more. I was asked to talk about some of my time here at the seminary, and after 10 years, that's a whole lot of stuff to remember, a whole lot. But there are 2 incidents that I'd like to bring to your attention this evening. And the first one was when I came here as a student in 2003. I was a third career professional. And I came here believing that I could do the seminary full-time as well as work full-time. So I was a bivocational student, whatever that meant. And the first class that I took was Hebrew. I thought I was going to lose my mind. And it was a dismal failure because the first exam that I had, I flunked. And I remember the professor calling me into the office and saying to me, maybe you need to choose a different career. This may not be where God has called you to be. And I was devastated. And I ran out of the classroom, and I ran into a senior student at that point, and she said to me, Jamesetta, hold your head up. If God has brought you to it, God will bring you through it. And that is what had sustained me over the next 3.5 years. The second thing that I remember so vividly was in 2008, and I went on a seminary trip to South Africa. And the topic for that mission trip was race reconciliation and HIV/AIDS. And there were a couple things that transformed my life while I was there. First of all, it was a person named Lydia. We went to her house. And when we went to her house, we knew that she had been suffering from HIV for about 14 years. She had a young son, and she had just found out that she now had breast cancer. But when I walked into the house with all of the other students, she looked at me and she said, Molo, mama, Molo. And I didn't know what that meant, but I later found out that it was a term of endearment that said, welcome home, mama, welcome home. And that made a profound effect on me, where I began to believe that no matter where you are on life's journey, you should be welcomed home in God's house. And so the Molo Village CDC was established as a result of that. But the other thing that happened was we attended a Presbyterian church, the J.L. Swanee Presbyterian Church. And there was a pastor there who talked about how he had taken chairs out of a truck every day for about 5 years to do ministry. And he now had a congregation of about 1,000 people with a building and music ministry and just all types of ministries. And when I asked him, what is it that you did in order to build and to grow this ministry? He said to me in his broken English, we use what we got. We use what we got. And so we left South Africa, and Pastor Teresa was there with us. We left, and we decided that we were going to use what we got. We had a 165-year-old building that was falling down. We had resources in our community. While some people may have thought that they were not worthy, we knew that there was worth in each of them. And so we used these people, we used this broken down building and began to do ministry in a new way. And so as a result of that trip to South Africa, my life was transformed and our ministry was transformed as well. There were a lot of faculty here, a lot of students, a lot of people in this seminary that have made a difference in my life and in the ministry of St. Peter's. There has never been a time that I didn't raise my hand or raise a white flag and say, I need help, that someone from the seminary did not show up to help me. Some of you, Sue, I think she was our first speaker on one occasion. There have been others that have come to just support the ministry in multiple ways, even painting. We created a women's center, and students came and painted and sanded the walls and painted the center. And so what I'm saying to you is that if it were not for you, as my brothers and sisters, supporting the ministry, then we may not be able to do the ministry that we're doing now. God has blessed our ministry. And as Deborah has mentioned, we have gone from serving 15 German-American senior adults now to serving over 800 people in our faith community each week. We're now open 7 days a week, and we just praise God for the increase, because these are the men and women that are considered the disinherited, but now they are a true symbol of God's wholeness in our community. They are a living testimony of what God can do. Thank you so much for this award.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. And now it's time to present our Distinguished Alum Awards. Introducing our first Distinguished Alum Award recipients this evening, and there are 2 recipients to this particular award, is Dr. Lauren Townsend, Director of our Marriage and Family Therapy Program and Professor of Pastoral Care and Counseling. Lauren, if you'll come forward.
Bifocals adjusted here. It really is a privilege to be able to introduce Amanda and Jack Ragland this evening as recipients of the Distinguished Alumni Award. Jack and Amanda were here when I got here, and Jack was on the committee that interviewed me for my very first time on campus, and were part of the team that convinced me to come here. And so I have some very nice deep roots with both Jack and Amanda. Amanda, let me just go back up just a little bit, and that is that Amanda and Jack are pioneers in many ways. They were here and studied pastoral counseling, and were some of the formers of the Marriage and Family Therapy Program. It wasn't in existence when they were here, but they were part of developing it and turning it into what it is today. Once they had gained their certification, they became supervisors in the program and helped again to be able to establish what would become the program that we see today with us. And Jack has also served as adjunct professor in the field ed for a time, so been very, very involved in this program. Amanda was the first director of our counseling center, and was primarily responsible for turning it into kind of an adjunct private practice model to a real center that has administrative structure. And we were very, very, very sorry to see Jack and Amanda go when they left Louisville to go to Huntsville. So the on-campus piece here has made such an important contribution to where this particular program has come. But they did move on and did kind of the same thing when they went to Alabama. I went to Huntsville and again started a new agency and started a new work and started a new counseling program that has taken off and grown quite nicely. As Jack said at dinner, their footprint is big in northern Alabama. And they have people coming from all over northern Alabama to make use of their services. And the services they provide have always been theologically integrated. They've been very good therapy services. They've been in service to the church as churches ask for their leadership to help their pastoral care within churches to improve. So they've been leaders in northern Alabama in a very important, significant way. One of the things I've had some more contact with them after they left was they've also been involved in our DMin program since they left. So they've kept that connection with us and have been one of our best centers to train some of our DMin students. They get great supervision with Amanda, they get great supervision with Jack, and so our DMin students are well taken care of when they're available in northern Alabama. So their work didn't leave when they did. And they've been working with us off and on. They've been developing programs, and they have made a significant contribution to the life of the church in more ways than we can count. So I want to welcome now Amanda and Jack as the recipients of the Distinguished Alumni Award, and thank you very much for the service you've offered to the seminary, to the church, to the Northern Alabama community, and to the enduring legacy I know you have here in Louisville through PCS and other areas of work since you have left. So thank you, and congratulations.
What Lauren didn't tell you is that we met here the first day of orientation. So, the best thing the seminary gave me when we were notified about this, Jack and I kind of looked at each other quizzically, like, you gotta be kidding. There's a mistake. We're really deeply honored by this presentation and humbled. And my life calling is to sit in front of God's hurting and broken, and to the very best that I can with who that I am, to bring the love and grace of Jesus Christ into the world. And what I learned here at the seminary was a lot. You know, when you're going through it, Gene March said, that seminary is like 40 days in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. That was one of his famous quotes. So you get out and you look back and you realize the seminary taught you how to think. Seminary taught you how to feel. I look out in the room and I think of my professors, and I see one person who was my therapist when I was in the program, as well as my supervisor, and changed my life. You can't bring healing that you can't experience. So the seminary was a transforming time for me in my life. And, it's only in, I'm not going to tell you how many years retrospect, you realize the rich environment and the soil that God brings you to grow and to learn. I will tell you that just one story that just warms my heart and gives you a glimpse of the joy of my life in terms of serving God. I know a little person that's about this tall. She's 6 years old, and she has blonde hair down to her waist and the biggest blue eyes you've ever seen. And she came into my office, and I had the privilege to get to know her. And she's got these big blue eyes, the biggest you've ever seen, most beautiful little girl. Well, her eyes were dead, and she had been sexually abused, and her mother brought her in for counseling, and we talked and talked and talked through all of it, as you might imagine. And I worked with her mother on how to be her counselor, and I counseled and cried, and oh my gosh, the story that this little girl had to tell. But I'll never forget the day in my life when she came running into my office when it was time for her appointment. She could barely wait. She bust down the hall. She ran in and she said, Miss Amanda, my nightmares have stopped. And she had one of these little sparkly headbands on, the little glitter kind. And when she said that, I was, of course, overcome in that moment with emotion, because her eyes were sparkling and they were alive. And I felt like the Lord saying into my ear, a crown of beauty instead of a crown of ashes. And so that's my life calling, and this place, Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary, equipped me to be in service. And every year that passes, I just learn more and more the wonder that I got out of this place. So I'm deeply humbled. I will continue in service, and I just thank you from the bottom of my heart.
And I also want to echo, of course, everything that Amanda said, but also the sense of being totally astounded when we were notified of this, and Judy Johnston will tell you it almost passed in the night because we didn't get the original notification, and she was wondering what was going on with us down there in Alabama.
Our fault.
Our fault. Our fault.
Our fault.
But after that settled in, it really gave me pause to think about reflecting on what happened here in our years in Louisville. The entire time we were here in Louisville for about 13 years, and the entire time had involvement with the seminary in it, either as students or then the privilege to be able to work with students from the clinical staff standpoint. And I really reflected on how so much of that time here had just become totally a part of the fabric of who I am. I remember one of the interestingly most powerful classes I had was with Gene March, and I told him about this earlier with the Pathos of God class that he had about how God feels about things and the injustices in the world, and we confront those every day in what we do. And I was even reminded, and this one kind of came out of nowhere, and since I was in the counseling program as a student, and that's what I was doing, but I was taking a class with David Hester in Christian education. And I remember with what he taught me in terms of critical thinking and in terms of how to really look at issues and think things through. And then, of course, at the time we were here, David Steer was a senior professor and became a dear friend of ours. And I thought a lot about David. In fact, I think about David a lot still yet. I'll be sitting with someone who is telling me something out of their lives, and outwardly I'll be nodding, and inwardly I'm going, I have not a clue what to say next. And I'll ask David in my head to tell me something. And he usually does, for good or for bad. And I remember those times. But one other thing I remember David saying, which I think was crucial in part to what we did when we went down to Alabama for the counseling center down there, was an offhanded comment one time when I was talking to him, and he said, it's really interesting. We get the students out of here in the counseling program, and they go on, and they tend to have really nice careers in counseling practices. But what happens to those who really are on the edges and on the margins, who can't afford to pay, if you will? It's really sad that they kind of get left to the edge. But one of the things we did when we moved to Huntsville with the counseling center there is it is a nonprofit, and we do everything we can to never turn anybody away due to their socioeconomic condition, so that we have a broad base of people that we try to serve from all walks of life, and a lot who are very much on the margin. And I reflect in terms of how the heart for ministry that we learned when we were here is central to that. As I said, it's a very, very part of the fabric of what we do every day. And so even though we're 300 miles down I-65, we're never far from Louisville. It's always here, and it's always in our hearts, and we can't express what this program and what the seminary meant the time we were here. We thank you.
It is indeed a privilege for me to be here to talk about one of the luminaries of this institution, as well as one of the luminaries of my life and my career. So I have to take you back to 2007, when the call came from Louisville Seminary for me to serve as the Dean of Students, interim at that time. I'm getting my bearings under me, reading every type of responsibility that I need to do, going back on files, getting past work that's been done, getting my work under my hands. And one of the first phone calls that I receive is a phone call from someone I had never heard, who wanted to have an urgent meeting with me. the meeting is very urgent, and you've got to make sure that you make time for this conversation. I'm a new kid on the block. I'm not trying to mess up nowhere with nobody. And so we have our first meeting, and that was my introduction to Becky Richie. She comes through the front door. She is not smiling. She comes through the front door and she asks, may I have a seat? She has a seat. And the first question she asks, with those strong eyes blazing into mine, is, sir, have you been through spiritual direction? Interesting question. I said, say some more about that. She then commences to describe to me the practice, context. National Baptist, 12 plus years of pastoring in a rural community, have never even heard of spiritual direction. Neither have had any kind of experience with the wonderful practice. And so, to her question, I said, I don't think so. And the rest is history, because she, in her passion and love for that sacred practice, began to make me her personal directee. And we met twice a month in the prayer room here on campus. And she said, give me the privilege of serving as your spiritual director. This was my introduction to the spiritual direction program, of which I then found out that the one who was introducing me to this wonderful practice was one of the originators of the program on this campus. It's not often that you get to be taught by the pioneers of any field. This was the spirit and the passion of Rebecca Richie. From a small community in Berkeley County, West Virginia, God crafted a spirit and a soul who was born to care for human life. She served as a nurse, caring for the broken and for those that need healing. And her nursing career led her to serve at the mission board of the Presbyterian Church in Cheonju, South Korea. She had the privilege of returning there before her untimely death. She was the originator of the spiritual direction program here at Louisville Seminary. She led the effort at Louisville Seminary to establish the labyrinth that students and community members throughout this area has a chance to benefit from. She hooked me up with every spiritual director that is currently serving on our spiritual directors list. And she has been instrumental in the comments that students have. Her life effort and her life work has been a fruit that has been born in the survival of students on this campus. To the person who engages in spiritual direction, students will say stuff like this: if it wasn't for Becky, and if it wasn't for spiritual direction, I would not have survived seminary. And I would say to you that if it wasn't for Becky Richie, I would not survive as the Dean of Students of Louisville Seminary. She paved the way for some great care for students. And because of her care for my spirit, it set the tone of how I would care for the spirits of students on this campus. It is my privilege and my pleasure to present to you a family member who has come to receive this posthumous honor for someone who is so well-deserving. Her family member, Sharon Hovland, is here to receive Becky Richie's award. Let's welcome her as she comes.
First of all, thank you from Becky's family. The Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Ballinger Smith Richie. I had the pleasure of knowing her as Aunt Becky for 55 years. While I could fill her shoes physically, I don't have any prayer of filling those shoes tonight. But she's been with me the whole drive down, and I'm saying what she wants me to say. I will tell you, when I first heard about the award, my first reaction was, yes! Thankfully, somebody recognizes how special I think she was. My second reaction pretty quickly was, I wonder what her reaction is. And instantly, the line of one of my favorite Christmas songs came through my head, and I don't believe for 1 second it was a random thought. And that line was from a song where Mary is asking God, do you ever wish that a wiser one had had my place? I think we all know that God picked the perfect person for the plan he had in place for her. And it's my honor to be here to accept the award, but it's a bittersweet honor because we all wish she was standing here to accept it. But that wasn't God's plan. Becky first perceived God's plan when she was probably about 10 years old. And growing up on a dairy farm in a very small community in West Virginia, a missionary from the Congo visited the church when she was home on furlough. Becky was hooked. So was the missionary. We found out later that that missionary had written her name in her Bible and had carried it with her and prayed for Becky every day since that meeting, that she would realize her dream of going on the mission field. It was a very long, roundabout story. So after that meeting, Becky began to plan, as she was known for doing. Unfortunately, it was her plan, not God's plan. So when she took her first nursing test, entrance exam, she failed. Because that wasn't where she was supposed to be. God took her to Charlotte, Presbyterian School of Nursing, because that's where she was supposed to be. When she finished nursing school, she immediately applied to the mission field, to the board. Was turned down. Another failure because it wasn't when it was supposed to happen. The plan was that it would happen the next year when her little sister from nursing school would have graduated and also go on the mission field with her. Becky wanted to go to China, having had the pleasure of meeting Catherine Patterson at a senior youth conference, home on furlough from China. Her little sister from nursing school, Pam, went to the Congo, which is how Becky found out that Elizabeth had had her name in the Bible. So it was all part of the plan. Becky spent quite a few years in Korea, and there were many times during that where God decided, I'm going to do a new thing through you. You will perceive it. And she had to come back, finish her BS in nursing, came back to do rehab training, got married, didn't go back to Korea. Many times during her life, coming to seminary was another one where God was doing a new thing. And her next to the last new thing was when she got to go back to Korea, where she was home. I truly expected her to die in Korea. She was teaching English to students that desperately wanted to learn. But more importantly, she was being a spiritual director, unofficially, until she and Sung-gi started the first spiritual direction training program in South Korea. She would have continued, but genetics took over. And having had the hips replaced not long out of seminary, her knees were deteriorating, and when she came back from Korea, she could barely walk, which was a struggle for me to watch. So she had the knees replaced, and everyone kept saying, "So what comes next? We've gone through all of these adventures with you. What comes next?" Her response was constantly, "God hasn't revealed it yet. When he has, I'll let you know." Well, abruptly, at least abruptly in my lifetime and my time, God revealed that plan. When my husband died, one of my former chemistry physics students sent me an essay titled, "You Want a Physicist to Speak at Your Funeral?" Gotta love high school students. Was right on. Because we teach them that you cannot create or destroy energy. You can transform it, but you cannot destroy it. Death cannot destroy the energy that made Rebecca Richie. And she and I had many conversations about that when she was still in Korea. Many including the infamous clock radio. If any of you have heard the story about her clock radio that didn't work but would just mysteriously start playing. Couldn't turn it on, couldn't turn it off, but it played. Violin music. It has seemed to have vanished in her move from Louisville to my house in West Virginia. I have still not found it in her things. But my take on Aunt Becky dying was that God was doing a new thing. He needed her spirit, her energy, to go do something that it couldn't do constrained in a human physical body. So I know that God is doing a new thing through her, still. My prayer is that we will be willing and able to perceive it.
This has been an extraordinary evening, and I want to thank you all for being a part of it. I'm going to close, and you have plenty of time. I know that our safety officer for Louisville Seminary would reiterate, you have plenty of time to safely make it from here to the chapel. You have a whole 5 minutes. We're good. Take your time. Be careful. But we're going to close with a prayer that I came across by Tukaram. This is a peasant mystic from India who lived from 1608 to 1649, and it is really an extraordinary prayer, and I want it to be our prayer closing tonight in celebration of these lives that are giving so much to the world. Take, Lord, unto yourself my sense of self, and let it vanish completely. Take, Lord, my life. Live, I pray, your life through me. I live no longer, Lord, but in me now you live. Yes, between you and me, my God, there is no longer room for I and mine. Amen. Thank you all very much.